Welcome, everybody. You all know what today is. That's right. It's joke day, or, well, I guess it's comedy day, but jokes definitely play in the mix here. And today I have with me Tito. Tito, welcome to the show
Thanks.
here.
Thanks for having me.
And you're a dad, right?
Yes, I am.
So,
I have three kids who are all in their 20s.
all right. So you're like a joke master, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So where do you keep all your jokes, Tito?
In my brain, I guess.
Yeah.
Where do you keep your jokes?
Well, I keep mine in a database. That's right. I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help myself. And believe it or not, this show wasn't just for the shirt. I loved it so much that I got it for Father's Day. So I
Nice.
was like, oh
Very
man,
nice.
this is good. So I'm excited. And as we know, like whenever we're talking about dads and comedy, right? You always have like your favorite comedian, and typically you'll have like a source where you get most of your jokes from. So are you more of like do you have a book of jokes, or is it one of those calendars with jokes? What do you got, Tito?
Well, I actually have a photographic memory. So I used to have a book of jokes that I got for Christmas like 20 years ago, and I read the whole thing. And every now and then, somebody will ask a question or somebody will say something, and it reminds me of one of those jokes. And I'll be very serious. I say, hey, I'll lead into like this. Hey, there's whatever it is, and then people are listening intently, and then I know I have them. I got them. The hook's in them already, and then I just lay it on them. And usually my kids, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that was terrible," But it's like I had you. You were right there.
That's always the best whenever there's a joke tagline like that. I should have had
Mm.
my dad on the show because he's really good at
Oh
dad
yeah.
jokes. Man, yeah, I didn't think about that one. All right. So when we talk about jokes and comedy, right, there's actually a pretty good sources in regards to some of these, and then pulling in this data, right? Um, do you have a fun workflow to share in terms of,
Yeah, sure do.
uh, yeah,
So it's actually one that is I don't know. Can anybody see my screen? Yes,
yeah,
there it is. Cool. So using Alteryx, it's a workflow that we use to teach about leveraging APIs. And so um, the URL that we're hitting is called icanhasdadjoke.com. And I don't know, can we put that in the chat?
yeah,
Uh, chat. I Here, I'll send this in the private chat, and
nice,
then perhaps Aaron can put it out there. So anyway, so this workflow is just like, hey, we're gonna hit this API and pull in every time you run it, every time you run the workflow, it gives you a new dad joke. So there's actually a couple instances here where we have a dad joke coming in. And so if I run this workflow, it doesn't take much time, and um, I can look at my browse tool and I can see my joke down here, but it's not a really great way to see it because you have to deal with all this other stuff, right? So
yeah,
this this other branch down here, I could just use the filter tool to filter down to where the ID is, and then grab the JSON value string and create this line right here, which will create a PNG, and then I'll bring it in as to as or sorry to output it as a blob, and then convert it from a blob to a PNG. So then when I look at my browse tool, I can actually see a well, that's terrible. That is terrible. What is that? So then I can see a picture of my joke, right? So what do you call a sheep with no legs? A clown. I don't really like that one, so I'm going to run the workflow again, and then now I can see a different joke. So I'm going to have a PNG of a different joke. I've been trying to come up with a dad joke about momentum, but I just can't seem to get it going. That's perfect. I think that's a perfect one.
Exactly. And I think that's something about dad jokes, right, that are interesting. You almost need like a laugh meter, right? Um, or like a scoff meter because half the time they're like, ha, ha, that's so funny. No, like we got to let it go, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think when we look at these, that's the exciting piece is these are the type of workflows, especially when you look at these joke generators, right? Typically they'll only spit out one joke. So when I'm kind of looking at this, that's something when we're looking at what do we like about these flows is they're so simple, right?
Hmm.
So it's so
Yep.
simple just to do one call. It's nice. And then at least you get to smile at the end of it instead of hello world, right?
Yeah. Hello world. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. And since we, have since we're doing the API call twice, we can actually see that it's not throwing out the same joke. I wouldn't buy anything with Velcro. It's a total ripoff. That's that's a dad joke if
that's
I've ever
definitely
heard
a
one.
dad joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically nowadays when I make jokes with my kids, it's great because just wait. I know you have a baby, but just wait till he's in his 20s. So my youngest is 22 and my oldest
Nice.
is 26. She's about to be 26 and she's married. And so now when I make jokes, they're more adult, but I get some feedback like they're like, "Oh, Pop, there was a line there and you crossed it." I'm like, "What? Man, come on."
You're old enough for these now, right? I've been
Yeah,
holding out on
exactly.
these, right? Yeah.
Exactly. I've been waiting. I've been waiting years. I've been holding on to these things with my photographic memory for decades. Let me tell you.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's interesting as we kind of talk about these, right? Like that almost gets into question three, like what would you, if you were sharing with the data with someone, what would you change or are there any minor adjustments, right? And I've got a couple of sources that are they're probably a little crass, right? So like you've got some Chuck Norris jokes, especially when you're going to these joke databases, you don't know what's in there. And I think that's actually kind of interesting because um, it it gets into a little bit of like natural language processing, right? And even keywords. So whenever we're doing data transformation like this, right, there may be some of those things that either we just want to filter out or bleep out, right, depending on who the audience is.
Mm.
Because like my son, he's David's only 6 months old, right? He doesn't need to hear all those things. But like your 20-year-olds may be like, oh yeah, we can take a few of those jokes, right? We'll listen to those, Dad. So I think that's interesting because as we look at data transformation, literally you can accumulate some of these jokes and then kind of filter them even just based on age group or um, appropriate for the target audience, so you don't end up getting smacked around like Chris Rock, right?
Right. Oh. Yeah. My kids wouldn't hit me because they
Yeah.
get it. We're doing some whippings today? Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think when we look at this, right, it really does keep things exciting in terms of API calls because there's tons that are out here for free. So what you've got a couple in here. Um, were you filtering on like a different type or did they have categories? What were some of the calls?
So on this one, we have it on the hey render. Yeah, it's so the ID field because the ID or I'm sorry, where the JSON name is ID. Because we're taking part of that and creating the image URL, right? So the image
Yes.
URL is right there. Whereas on this one, we're filtering down to where the joke actually is. Like we don't want to know the status. It's like status 200, okay, but like what we want to know is what the actual joke is. So bring in the joke and then just get rid of everything you don't need and create the PNG that has the terrible joke in there, and so then we could see it all by itself.
Nice. Yeah, and I think what's interesting is we kind of talk about joke context, right? So before you'd get like a joke book and okay, it literally just has all the jokes written out, right? Now I think more of the modern context is going to be like a meme or a GIF,
GIF,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you say
yeah,
GIF? I
GIF,
say
yeah,
GIF. Tomato, tomato.
GIF,
So then if
exactly.
it's a GIF, that's like a graphical interface format.
Exactly. It's meant to be funny, right?
Right, graphical. So it's got a
Traffic.
long neck. Yep.
Exactly. It's a long-winded joke. They couldn't just say it in words, right? It needed to be 1,000. What is it? Pictures worth 1,000 words. So,
Yes.
like, that's a long joke. It's definitely a long
Yep.
joke. Awesome. Yeah. So, yes, what are some things like if you were sharing this out to like maybe your team or something, right? Or I guess even your kids,
Oh yeah.
would you?
Oh, I would definitely use some of my reporting tools and slap an email on there,
Yeah.
and so like I would put their email addresses in there, and then I would put uh, from like no reply, so they wouldn't know it's from me. And then I'd save it to Alteryx server and schedule it to run. I think if I wanted to be really terrible, I'd schedule it to run every hour. To be like, why do I keep getting these dad jokes in my emails? And it's like I can't even. There's no place to unsubscribe. They'd be like, I can't unsubscribe. And then I think eventually it would get to me, and they'd be like, Pop, do you know how to do this? Because any kind of technical questions they ask me, Pop, do you know how to do this? And I would just be like trying to be serious, but then I know I'd just start laughing, crying, and then my wife would be like, what did you do? Well, I scheduled an Alteryx workflow to run every hour and send them a dad joke every hour.
I think you're being generous, right? With once an hour. I mean, I'm thinking Friday is April Fool's, right? So we need these generators
Oh,
to be going like every every 3 minutes or so. It's shooting off a joke. They're just gonna be like bing, bing, bing. Like, what is going on? And nothing but bad jokes, right?
you're gonna get me in
Yeah,
trouble. I
yeah,
can't do that. I'm gonna delete this email tool right now so then I can just. It's no longer an option. I'm not gonna do that.
yeah.
But if I wanted to, I could. I'm not gonna do that. Stop feeding me those things. I can't do it.
Fine, just a joke summary then. You could totally
Oh
do a
yeah.
joke summary. Yeah,
Oh yeah. I mean, shoot, I could make it print to a like print a report and then or output to a report, and just every time it runs, just append to it, and at the end of
yeah,
the week, send them a whole spreadsheet full of dad jokes from
exactly.
all week, and then again do the no reply thing so that they don't know. It's like I just keep getting this email from
I
no
have no idea where
reply.
it's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we kind of talk about these different jokes and like where you get them from, right? They really are all over the place. I mean, obviously you've got the traditional ones like dad jokes, but you even have some uh, that are completely different. Um, like I'll go ahead and switch over here. So like literally you have ninja jokes, like a whole category on ninja jokes, right? And so when we're looking at this, you may be like, where could you find an entire API full of ninja jokes? So if you come over here to RapidAPI and check this out, um, literally all I did was do a search for jokes, right? And these are literally a bunch of APIs. Like, so of course you got old school Yo Mama jokes, right? Slapbot, you've got an entire API dedicated to memes, right? So you can definitely crank some of these out. And this is good because it's fun, right? It's not the same ones that you typically see, right? So like
Oh,
pirate
pirate
jokes.
translator.
Exactly. Exactly. So you've
I
got
need that.
tons of jokes here. Yeah. And then I don't know how Southwest API ended up in here. That's kind of interesting that the Southwest have jokes. Like it's making me wonder here, right? So now I may literally just try this out, get a one-way flight. Like, is that supposed to be a joke? Now I'm wondering. Now I've at least got to explore the API endpoint, right? And when we start looking at some of this, right? So I literally came in here and I said, oh, I'm going to try some of these out. So this one was a separate website. This is the only one that's different. Literally, I found an API that just had Chuck Norris jokes on it. And then what's interesting is you had like different categories. So in this case, I found some that were just on career because there is literally a whole category for explicit, right? So if you do random, just kind of keep in mind as you're working with APIs in general and data that there could be some explicit language in there. And you may literally be thinking like, well, when am I ever going to deal with explicit language in my normal job, right? Um, I actually used to work at Universal, and they would do surveys, right, of people coming out of all places, Halloween Horror Nights, right? So at that point, it's after 10 p.m. They serve liquor and they scare people. So what type of comments do you think normally end up coming from there? Like some of them definitely are a little more graphic than what you would normally
Colorful.
experience. Yeah,
Colorful,
colorful.
yeah.
Yeah. So you got colorful commentary, right? Um, and then what's even interesting about that is when we talk about colorful commentary, you're there to scare people, right? So like, and you're there to get scared. So when you look at some of those comments, like it scared the crap out of me, right? Normally you would probably filter that out. But in some places, like that may actually be powerful in terms of getting that context, right? So an example would be like if you worked in maybe you work in the movie industry, right? So you actually do want to know, hey, was it scary, right? That's exciting if it actually did scare people. Another example would be like call center related data, right? And then as we kind of talk about um, what are some things that we like about this, right? This is a simple way to start exploring jokes and then also work on building libraries related to establishing context and natural language processing, right? And there's a whole set of tools within this platform, within Alteryx that you can use related to that. And that is going to be over here on the side. Did they, like, do I not have it installed on this one? No, no, it's just moving around here. So you've got some text mining tools here, and then you even have some machine learning here that exists, right? Where you can process and do other aspects here. So you can use these tools within the intelligence suite, right? As we kind of talk about other platforms within data transformation, you can even connect to third parties. So like here you have this entire AIware suite that exists. And what they are actually is, I think of them as like being the AWS, right? Or like the Amazon, sorry, the Amazon storefront of um, all of the different cloud platforms, because each of them, IBM, like AWS, GCP, like Google Cloud Platform, right, and Azure, they all have cognitive services which will help you do that natural language processing. So if we were trying to understand context, right, we can farm it out to any of these platforms. And what's I get excited about is we may be focusing on Alteryx right here. I could be using other platforms, Matillion, Trifacta, um, Informatica, etc., right? Those API endpoints can kind of play in here and you can use them. Hopefully you're not going to burn a bunch of money on jokes. At that point, I'll just tell you to buy a joke book. But if you want to practice some of the natural language processing, this can be a way to do it, right? And then at least you can send your kids an email every day, which actually my dad still does this, Tito. He literally has a email that he sends, it just says chiste. So then that's literally just joke in Spanish, right? And that's, I'll just search that and then I know, hey, I got a joke in the inbox, right? So I'll check it out.
Funny.
So with this one, you've got career jokes, right? So you can see in here, this was a pretty basic call. It literally just has the fields, no headers or payload. And then obviously it's JSON. So I can see JSON here. And then I'm parsing this out, right? And when we're looking even back here, I can click here and it'll show, okay, here's the entire call, right? And then if I parse this out, kind of like you did, right? I'm holding the call together. And then this one's literally Chuck Norris is actually the front man for Apple. He lets Steve Jobs run the show. When he's on a mission, Chuck Norris is always on a mission, right? So it's like, oh my gosh, Chuck Norris jokes. Of course, right? That's all we got to say there. And then when we talk about the Rapid API, right? So if you're looking to get exposure to different APIs, this is kind of a good way to go about doing it. Literally, this has similar formatting in terms of the API. So the site that you just saw there a second ago, let me see if I can pull it back up here. So literally that site you just saw a second ago, right? So when we kind of look at this site, it's going to have all these. So literally your keys and stuff stay the same. And then you can cycle through and learn different ways of calling, right? So everything from the dad jokes here, right? So I can see it kind of broken out. And then literally we'll see, okay, here's a bunch of the dad jokes, right? And this one's kind of interesting because this call literally broke it out. So some of these they'll have, is there a hole in your shoe, right? And then there's a punchline. No, then how did you get your foot in it? Right? So
I
that's
can't
that.
see your screen anymore. What happened to your screen?
Uh-oh. Oh, man. Now I saved the punchline here. Let's go back to that. There we go. Man, I should have shared the system audio too, and then it would have went ba-dum, right? So here, I mean, literally you've got that breakdown, right? Where you can see this has a different setup where, like you were talking about in the JSON, is it all garbage or is there context, right? So you can cluster these together. And like this, is there a hole in your shoe? No, then how did you get your foot in it, right? So then maybe literally what I would do is the next step for this is I would want to queue all these up and then maybe even do some more categorization, right? What's something, Tito, like as we kind of talk about jokes, like do you normally have like a favorite category of jokes or how do you like kind of tie your jokes together?
I usually play it off the conversation. So
Nice.
I'm an extrovert, if you haven't already guessed, and so I really like conversation when people are talking. I always consider myself like not an expert in anything. I'm sure I'm an expert in something, but somebody always knows more. But I like to know a little bit about everything so that I can have some type of in a conversation. And then when people just start talking, they set themselves up. People just don't know. They just set themselves up all the time. And like my wife, she sets herself up all the time. And that's, I mean, we can't talk about those things here, but she sets herself up all the time. And she's like, I knew it. I shouldn't have said that. It's like, you're right. You shouldn't have said that. But yes, it's just playing off the conversation. People talk about things and they don't know when you say something, you're not thinking. Most normal people are not thinking how what they're saying can tie into something else, whether it's going to be
Yeah.
something funny or inappropriate. Obviously, just my wife and me, our conversations. But most people don't think that. But now they're getting to know people who are getting to know me are getting to know that, oh, here's that guy again. And so I have to kind of watch what I'm saying. But I just got to warn you, it doesn't help, because I know a little bit about everything and how things can be funny. Things just are funny.
Yeah. And I mean, as we're looking to explore that, right? So especially when we talk about jokes and comedy, right? Some of it we may find personally funny, and then other times, like it may be a specific audience, right? So I think that's something interesting that we can kind of take away from this, is everybody has their own flavor or um, viewpoint that they would like in regards to, in particular, comedy, right? I think that's the same in what we see from a reporting aspect within everyday transformations that we're doing, right? So literally, we may be using that same data set, right? So a database of jokes, right, is, or a database, I should have said, a database of jokes, right, to kind of pull that in. And then as we kind of talk about partitioning that out, right, people may have certain preferences or types of jokes that they would like to hear. Hey, I want something fun and uplifting, right? Um, and what I think is interesting about that is those can be tied into things that you're doing every day. Um, Literally, like my dad, he has, at the beginning of his meetings, he'll tell a joke, like just a dad joke, right? And he's gone on vacation a couple times, and then they're like, "Oh man, we missed your jokes. Like, we haven't had any jokes the last few meetings, or someone tried to fill in and they weren't as good, right?"
Bombed.
Yeah. And I think the best story he ever told me was, um, it was actually one of his managers. One of his managers actually saved his jokes and was retelling them like the following year. And I think when we look at this, right, that's something when we talk about these data sets, right, it's almost like a MDM. So you can recycle them, right? Because people aren't going to remember um, 4 or 5 years from now, right? Oh, what was that dad joke? Well, I guess Tito, you might remember that with the with some of the photographic memory, right? But most people aren't going to remember what joke was said or where they heard it from. And you can actually put these on a schedule, right? And kind of get some of that information out there. Like, hey, happy cheesesteak day was the other day, right? So if you had a joke on cheesesteaks, literally you can combine all those stories and just make it interesting, cooler talk, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
I would, if I were to, want to search, I would make one of these API calls into well, I mean, I'd create my own database, right, of all the jokes, and then I'd make an app where if I want to search for a certain subject, it would be like, oh, joke contains whatever, right? And
exactly.
then and then it's like, oh man, I'm feeling bad today. I'm going to the Alteryx gallery and I'm going to go look at a joke. I'm looking in, you know, uh, giraffes, right? Whatever,
Exactly.
looking for animals. And then I can just go, oh, okay. Whew, feels so much better after I went and I used that app on the Alteryx gallery to
It's
go
that
find
midday pick me up,
jokes.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Why not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, man, it's that, around 2 o'clock, I start getting really tired. I get all of my energy in the morning. I go to the gym, get swole, and then I'm like all amped up. And then after lunch, I'm like, oh, and I gotta have some coffee. But if I have coffee too late in the afternoon, then I'll be laying in bed at night just staring at the ceiling. So why not get a pick me up from
Yeah. Maybe you
getting a
need
dad
like
joke?
a little cortado and and a good laugh, right?
Right, a cortado and a good laugh. Why not? Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if I was a superhero, my weakness would be, I'll tell you right now. So I said that I had a photographic memory.
Yeah.
That's like literally like reading stuff and then I'll remember it the way it was on the page, or if I write it down, I remember how I wrote it. But if somebody
Yeah.
tells me something, it just tells me, say, "Hey, look at me. I'm telling you something." It's like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did we have a conversation? I totally forgot that we had a conversation. So 20 years in the military did not help me in that way. I always had to have something to write it down. They're like, "Hey, look at me." Yes, sir. I'm writing this down because I won't remember what you're gonna say. Yeah.
Oh man. See, and I'm exactly the opposite. I can remember most of the things that I've heard, but writing it down, I'm like, I can forget it because I already wrote it down. I know where it's at, right? I know exactly where it's at, but you asking me to remember what I wrote, forget it. And I think that's interesting as we get into a digital age, right? So I was having a conversation earlier today about um, having a conference booth, right? And kind of talking about how technology is going, like, do we need business cards anymore, right? Or should we just be using QR codes?
Mhm.
And as we kind of talk about some of this stuff, right? Simple example of this is, do you remember anybody's phone number?
I remember mine growing up.
Yeah,
I had two of them. You can dial them now. I'm not going to tell you the area code. So 359-5461 and 359-3871.
nice.
But and then I had two area codes because we changed. But if I mention where I grew up, then people are just going to dial. No, I don't know. I don't know what people do. I
This will
can't
be Squid
control what you
Games,
do.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I can't tell you how
Exactly.
many times as a kid I dialed 867-5309. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's Jenny's number, right?
Exactly. Exactly. The key one in your class, right?
That's the song Jenny. I know I'm old.
No,
Eight
I know
six
which one.
seven five three oh nine. Yeah, that's also a dad joke. My kids don't get that one either. It's okay.
Yeah, I think, see, what the problem is they haven't circled back around on those jokes yet. You need um, your Amazon Echo to relay some of those, right? Which that's actually another fun project that I've done. So you can tie in to the I keep saying Echo because we have some in this room, but literally you can tie those in, right? The API endpoints, and you can feed it dad jokes and other things. That's literally what people are doing is they're using these API endpoints. So if you want to explore some of these IoT related things, when we talk about transformation and how we're going to share some of them, right? We can get creative on how we're storing some of these data repositories, especially when it relates to things that we'll recycle. So like this, another one is quotes, right?
Hmm.
You could do holidays. So if that's something like you guys are interested in as you're kind of watching our show, then I definitely recommend reaching out, right? Do info at data meaning. And we've got some cool workflows and also visualizations. You can literally see those on our LinkedIn page. That's actually where that comes from, believe it or not, is that's all automated. Um, we do take credit for it. It's not just that no reply at datameaning.com, Tito. uh, but yeah, it's a cool way if you are interested in kind of sharing some of those and putting them on your servers, so that way you can have some of that camaraderie um, in your analytics environment. We'd be more than happy to share that with you. So awesome. All right, Tito, do you have any dad jokes before we wrap up today?
Oh man, it's not really a joke. It's a story. So
Story? Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's kind of a serious story. You know, I've been in places, and it's sad. Yes, it happens. You know, I was profiled for the way that I look. So there's this rope. He walks into a bar, right? And the bartender's like, "Hey, get out of here. We don't serve ropes." The rope's like, "Man, that stinks." Okay. So he walks outside and he ties his head up. And then he goes like this with his hair and he walks back in. Bartender's like, "Hey, Didn't I tell you to get out of here? We don't serve ropes in here. Aren't you that rope that I just talked to? And he looks at him and he says, nope, I'm afraid not.
Tito, I don't know whether to like just fall on the floor crying. Well, you want to hear the funniest part about this?
What's that?
That is my dad's favorite joke.
That's golden, man. That's great. That's amazing. I love that. One of my cousins told me that joke when we were probably 10 years old. My cousin Billy out there at Avon Park, Florida. Shout out to Billy.
Nice. Yeah. My dad will literally, like, he goes into the bathroom and he like ties himself into a knot and gets all puffed up and he does his hair. Yeah, he's got hand motions and everything. Oh my gosh. I cannot believe you just pulled that one. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's a dad joke for the ages, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, my cheeks are hurting. Like, just laugh. I'm like, that one's gotta make it. It's repped out now, right? Because it's literally here, ready to
Right.
go. Awesome.
You know, when your kids are small and you're looking at them, you're looking them in the eyes, and you think about all the things that you want for their lives. It's like my baby. I want her to grow up and to be confident and successful. My boy, I want him to be, all three of them, confident and successful. They're all good looking. They should be. They look like their mom. But one of the things that I also know is going to happen because of the conversations we have is that they're going to carry my jokes on into the future. And when I'm a grandpa, I'm going to be looking at their kids, and their kids are going to be asking me questions. Why did mommy or why did daddy say this, this, and that? And say, oh, that's a good question. That's a joke that I learned from my dad. And so that's my legacy.
Nice. Nice. That's a heck of a legacy, man. Given some smiles and laughter, right?
Yeah.
So easy. Yeah, I think that's not going to be as funny as next week, because next week we've got coffee for our setup.
Oh, we can make it funny.
Yeah. This is like comedians in cars getting coffee, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
I love that show.
Yeah. I don't know. Being a comedian nowadays is kind of dangerous. So
It
like
is.
having all my teeth.
Exactly. Exactly. All your teeth, right? Your reputation.
Yeah,
all that stuff. Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah. Awesome.
Never been slapped in front of a crowd of people. Hopefully that never happens.
I don't know. It depends on how what is that, colorful your jokes get in your old age. That's really the question.
Yeah, old age. Let me tell you, man. We Amogus men, we don't have much hair, but we got a lot of jokes. My dad's 83, 84.
Wow.
Is he 84? I don't know. He's getting up there. And he doesn't speak a lot, but when he talks, it's like, oh no. I'm like clenching my face. I'm like, kind of white knuckling it, because sometimes it's like completely inappropriate. I'm like, Dad, seriously. And he's like laughing, crying, because he's like, man, I'm at an age that I just don't care anymore. I can tell you how I feel and it just doesn't matter. I'm like, oh gosh, it's the wrong place to tell those jokes, Dad. So
I think probably the one guy that personifies this, right, and he's not a comedian, is actually going to be Clint Eastwood. So I don't know if you've watched some of his stuff lately. Like if you watch Mule, the movie Mule, it was really good.
No, I haven't seen it.
Right. I feel like it's his Gran Torino air, right? He's got all these ones.
Gran Torino. It's good.
Yeah. So they all kind of fit that build. And another one that happened, movie that he just made recently was Macho. Macho is really good too. And I think that's the interesting piece, especially when we talk about data transformation, right? You've got all these aspects in relation to context, what's funny, what's considered not. And that's where I look at, especially being in the context of data transformation, right? We can have all of these jokes, But essentially, we can filter it relative to context and apply some of those filters, right? In terms of what it is that we're looking for. And I think that's what's exciting about this is how can we do that over time, and can we build things that are sustainable, right, to apply that. And that's where like ML and all those things come in. I mean, kind of like coffee, right? I'm sure you remember like when Starbucks first started becoming a thing. Like that was huge. Like that was the epitome of coffee, right?
Yeah.
And now I feel like everybody's all snooty, right? Like, do you have cold brew? Is it on tap, right?
Oh, milk
Um,
alternatives. I'm Asian. I need milk alternatives. Like
exactly,
90% of us can't drink milk.
I'm like, you've got what? Almond,
Yeah, yes.
soy,
Oats, soy,
right?
yeah.
Oat's my favorite.
Yeah.
Oat's
I
definitely
like
my favorite.
I
Yeah,
like it because I feel like when I'm drinking the coffee, I feel like I'm drinking my oatmeal as well. So it's like breakfast in a cup.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
actually I can't wait until next week, our coffee episode, because I want to show you what I'm doing with my filters.
your coffee
But
filters?
oh man. Come on, man.
Man,
Ah.
that one just went right over. That was brilliant.
Oh my gosh. I've been holding that one in for the last 5 minutes, man. You're killing me.
That was really good. Oh man. All right. I think on that note, we got to wrap this up, Tito. That was really good. Man, so check us next time. You can tell we're just going to be cracking up the whole time. We've got Eric Shino, and then we're going to welcome Tito back to talk about some coffee. Hopefully the jokes aren't too acidic, but and we'll get some filters going in there. I've got cool things to sort through, like dirty chai, right? There's all these names
Ooh.
that sound all crazy, but all it is just mixing in with some coffee, right? So,
Yeah.
well, don't forget there's the link in the chat if you want to sign up for one of our future sessions. We're always looking for people to sign up, and we can't wait to see you next time. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Thank you for joining us with Transform Tuesdays. And thank you, Data Meaning, for letting us host this.
Where's my hand?